Welcome to CTL.SC2X, Supply Chain Design. This is the second course in the MITSCXX series on supply chain management. Now it's preferred, but it's not required, that you've already taken SC1X, Supply Chain and Logistics Fundamentals. In that course we covered a lot of the building blocks that we will utilize in this course. If you haven't, that's okay. We'll help you along and I'll point you to references. So let's get started. We should all know by now what a supply chain is. And the definition that we like to use is that it's two or more parties, companies, organizations, some entity, linked by a flow of resources. Typically this is material, physical material, information, and money that ultimately fulfill a customer's request. So we think of it as managing flows. There's the information flow, and the primary information flow is the order. I place an order for something. Hopefully it comes to me delivered, it's physical, and there's some kind of financial payment back. And there's also other information flows in between, usually the status of the delivery. So what we really like to think about supply chains is you're managing these different types of flows. So we know what a supply chain is, and we know that they involve multiple parties, not just a customer and a supplier, but usually that supplier's supplier and their supplier, all the way down to the raw materials. This is a linear relationship, but that's not that common actually. Most supply chains are very complex with nonlinear relationships, something like this, very ugly, where I have my customers over here in my raw material, but they're different manufacturers of components, and I have many cases where my main customer is also one of my primary suppliers. So it gets very complex and very nonlinear, and the nice thing about supply chains, what makes them so interesting, is they take many different forms. So one classic form is that of a manufacturer. So let's say in this simple example, I'm a bicycle manufacturer, and I like to think of this as tier 0. So the things that I do are the starting point. I might have two suppliers, and I would call these tier 1 suppliers. They're my primary suppliers. They supply the hardware and the frame for my bicycles that I manufacture. They in turn have primary suppliers, but for me as a bike manufacturer, they're tier 2. So they are suppliers to my supplier. And you can keep going back, tier 3, and in some supply chains you might go to double digits, tier 20, whatever. A lot of times you'll say tier N because you're going so far back. And so one of the challenges that we face in supply chain management is maybe I can control and manage these guys, my tier 1s, but as I move further back, I lose more and more control. And you can see a case here where I have 3 separate suppliers here for my tier 2, for my casting, my pedal, and my gear. But it turns out they're very contingent on one supplier here in my 3rd tier. I might not know about them, but if they go down, it knocks out a lot of my materials. So this is one type of supply chain form, but this is only half. So this is how the manufacturing is done, but you can think of the other side, the distribution downstream to the customers. So we talked about going upstream, now we're talking about the downstream portion. So my bicycle manufacturer might sell to wholesalers who sell to different retailers and then to different customers. But maybe I have my own series of stores. And so I as a manufacturer might also be a retailer and I have my own outlets or different niche stores. Or maybe I have a website and that's how people mainly buy their bicycles. So I have all these different channels for distribution, different ways of manufacturing on the upstream and distributing on the downstream. So there are many different forms. But when we talk about supply chain design, most people think of something like this. They think about the globe and where should I locate my manufacturing? Where should I locate my distribution? So they tend to focus on the physical, right? We focus on the physical because that's where we have to make those big investments. We're going to take a more expansive view here. When I talk about supply chain design, I'm talking about designing it all. So you need to know how information flows because it can flow very differently between the different parties in your supply chain. We'll talk about the physical design, but also the financial. You need to translate what we're doing in supply chain world into language that the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, can understand. So we'll look at all of these things when we talk about supply chain design. So what is a design though? So let's go back to basic definitions. It's always a good place to start. So if I go to Merriam-Webster and look at the definition of design, it's pretty obvious. The definition is to plan or make decisions about something. To create the plans, drawings that show how something will be made, to plan and make something for a specific user purpose. We all know this is kind of common sense, but it's not a really helpful definition. So I went to the software design literature and I found a better definition. I really like this definition. It's very dense, but let me talk you through it. So this is from Ralph and Wand, and they say a design of anything is a specification of an object or a system. We're going to focus on a system. A supply chain is a system of getting product to satisfy an end customer's demand. It's manifested by an agent. What does that mean? Well, you're an agent. You are doing it. Someone designs it. It doesn't just suddenly design itself. So someone is designing this system. It's intended to accomplish goals. You determine what goals it's going to accomplish. And we'll talk more. Different supply chains have different goals. It is designed to operate in a particular environment, so you need to know the situation that you're involved in. We use a set of primary or fundamental components. That's everything we learned in SC1X. So the fundamental ways of how you forecast, how you manage inventory, how you move product, all of those are building blocks that you use to accomplish your design. Now you do this satisfying a set of requirements, right? You have to meet that objective, and it's subject to constraints because we live in the real world. You don't have infinite budgets and infinite time. So you have constraints to satisfy requirements using your basic building blocks, and this is what you do in a design. I love this definition because it really encapsulates everything that we're doing, and we're going to see more of this. We're going to talk a lot about how you accomplish these goals because the primary hallmark of supply chain design is making those optimal trade-offs, mainly between cost and service, but there are a lot of other little trade-offs that are made along the way. Okay, so now we've defined it. We've said what a supply chain design is. Let's talk about why it's important at all.